most people have never heard of the Ashley phosphate beds of South Carolina, which is a shame because it is the best piece of evidence to ever exist currently that man has lived alongside of dinosaurs, without question. The Ashley phosphate bed is the largest graveyard ever found. This information has been forgotten by the sands of time, but I am going to bring it back. Today, the Ashley phosphate bed is mined for its high quantities of phosphate, which is being used for fertilizer, so there is great money to be made. These sedimentary layers are huge, covering large portions of the Carolinas and extending into Florida all the way up into Canada. World-famous geologist at the time, Louis Agassiz, described the phosphate beds as the greatest graveyard he had ever known. The phosphate beds are so full of bones that it is believed by scientists that the phosphate itself is made from bone. So, if the Ashley phosphate bed is loaded with such an incredible amount of fossils as to cause the leading geologist and zoologist of his day to call them the greatest graveyard he had ever known, you should ask yourself, why has zero mention of this ever been brought up? The fossils completely ravage the evolutionary timeline. That's why. Remember, if the geologic column is out of place, even in one area on Earth, then it falsifies the theory of evolution, and that the layers form slowly and that they represent time. Well, when you look at this one place where there's an 18-inch thick layer, you will see why it's suppressed. In it are rare fossils of everything from whales and porpoises, fish, sharks, megalodon shark, toads, crocodiles, alligators, turtles, rabbits, monkeys, horses, camels, elephants, mammoth, mastodon, rhinoceroses, giant sloth, muskrats, deer, pig, dogs, hadrosaur dinosaurs, iguanodon dinosaurs, plesiosauruses, ichthyosaurs, and human bones, teeth, and artifacts, all within the same layer. Professor S.F. Holmes, the paleontologist and curator of the College of Charleston's National History Museum, described the fossil graveyard in a report to the Academy of Natural Sciences. He stated, "Remains of the hog, the horse, and other animals of recent date, together with human bones mingled in with the bones of mastodon and extinct giant lizards." And this is on record. The occurrence of a hadrosaur dinosaur remains in the Ashley phosphate beds has not been dealt with in the secular science literature really at all. Only 2 sources exist. They have kept it silent, which is typical. The sad part is, when they first uncovered the relics of the human bone, they immediately became afraid. They, without hesitation, considered their jobs to be at a loss, so they said that the bone was out of place to one another, so they immediately threw it in the river to be erased from history and hidden from all view. They knew that such a find would cause them to either probably lose their jobs or their grant funding. And this is all the way back in the late 1800s. They were still in fear of the government from evolutionary dogma, as Darwin's theory had now taken hold. The scientists who studied this knew exactly what they had found. This is why their deep concern for finding such anomalies. Professor of Geology and Paleontology F.S. Holmes believed in the conventional evolutionary sequence. So he knew full well that humans and dinosaurs should not be found in the same layer. In fact, he wrote, "Not long after finding the above-named relics of human workmanship and engaged in our usual visits to the Ashley bed, a bone was found projecting from the bluff. Immediately in contact with the surface of the stormy stratum, we pulled it out and behold, a human bone. Without hesitation, it was condemned an accidental occupant of quarters to which had no right, geologically, and so we threw it into the river. Alas, we have lived to regret our temerity and rashness. A year later, a lower jawbone with teeth was taken from the same bed, and now we have it in the cabinet." After the news became public, I guess Holmes saw no reasons to cower from his discovery anymore, as Holmes portrayed a dinosaur with a man on the cover of his own book. Evolutionists have admitted that if dinosaurs are ever found with humans, then they would admit that the Noah's flood was real and that man did live alongside of dinosaurs, and that the biblical timeline is true. Because this evidence would validate that the Earth is young and that they had been lied to about our ancient history, there is no rescuing device for them either, because the Ashley phosphate beds had no layers to them. All of the fossils are mixed together in one huge pool of bones, 18 inches thick, covering 200 miles, with no layers found anywhere. The experts who spent considerable time excavating in the phosphate beds have said that there are no layers, and not even a remote resemblance of a layer. It is all one graveyard. You can learn more about the Ashley phosphate bed in a book called Man, Dinosaur, and Mammals Together, written by the late geologist John Watson, available at Mount Blanco Fossil Museum. A statement from the book says, "Since remains of land animals and sea animals were found together, a catastrophic event would have included the burial of enormous numbers of animals, and their subsequent conversion into the rock phosphate over a region of at least 200 miles by 30 miles in extent, which is only partially exposed apart. Such an event is of the order and magnitude of the worldwide Noetic flood."